In this video, I would like to talk about the pathophysiological features of the upper and lower motor neuron lesions. The upper motor neuron lesion is a lesion of the supraspinal projections which emerges from the higher center up to the anterior horn cell, and the most common causes of the UMNL are these spinal cord and brain injuries, cardiovascular accidents, strokes, cerebral palsy, etc. So the main pathophysiological manifestation of the UMNL is the disruption of the excitatory or inhibitory balance of the supraspinal projection on the anterior horn cell, whereas a lower motor neuronal lesion is the lesion in the either anterior horn cell and just below the anterior horn cell, where the alpha and gamma motor neuron exclusively involved. And mostly common causes are trauma to the peripheral neurons, GB syndrome or Guillain-Barré syndrome, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, polio, and Clostridium botulism, etc. are the mostly common causes of the lower motor neuronal lesions. In fact, the upper motor neuron and lower motor neuronal lesions have the unique features of their own. The first and foremost, let us see the upper motor neuronal lesion. So weakness is very common in the UMNL, and hyperreflexemia is one of the feature where the deep tendon reflexes progresses with the exaggerated response, the hyper responsiveness of the any deep tendon reflex, and increase the tone. Usually the tone of the muscle sustained contraction usually higher than the normal muscle tone is seen in the upper motor neuronal lesion. And atrophy of the muscle also seen because disuse atrophia is very common in the upper motor neuronal lesion, whereas a spasticity is nothing but the stiffness of the muscles is a predominant or most important feature of the upper motor neuronal lesion. The spastic muscle weakness. And Babniski sign is a positive in the upper motor neuronal lesion. I would be explaining in the later slides. So these are the common causes of common features, clinical features of the upper motor neuronal lesion, whereas lower motor neuronal lesion, the weakness is common. And fasciculations, the fasciculation means visible contraction of the group of muscles is known as a fasciculation, because high oscillations around 15 to 20 contractions of time contractions of the individual group of muscles or motor unit is seen in the fasciculations, is a very important feature of the lower motor neuron lesion, whereas hyporeflexemia just refers to the upper motor neuronal lesion. The deep tendon reflexes usually shows the hypo response rather the normal response, whereas severe atrophy because of lesion at the final common pathway, and hypotonia and plantar flexion are the most clinical feature of the lower motor neuronal lesion. And now we see what is the difference between the plantar flexion and Babniski sign. Plantar flexion is a normal flexion of the all toe followed by the stroke, like slightest stroke, scratching on the lateral aspect of the sole, response or triggers the flexion of all the toes. This is known as plantar flexion. So this is very common and very normal response of stroking of lateral aspect of the sole, whereas the dorsiflexion of the great toe and fanning of other toes is the response of Babniski sign. So Joseph Babniski was a scientist who extensively studied the upper motor neuronal lesion and lower motor neuronal lesions in his life. So that is why the response, the abnormal response, is known as Babniski sign, whereas plantar flexion is a normal response. Babniski sign is seen in the children of up to 2 years.